Microsoft spent $8.5 billion buying Skype, then killed it after 14 years of trying to decide what it was for. Skype had already made internet calling feel ordinary. But on May 5, 2025, the company that bought the future of communication switched it off and sent the remaining users to Teams. Skype failed even though video calling became essential, and Microsoft had every server, engineer, and distribution advantage imaginable. There was no single dramatic crash. Skype was dismantled one sensible decision at a time. First came an architecture built for desktop computers that could not follow people onto phones. Then came a redesign that pushed its App Store rating from 3.5 stars to 1.5. Finally, a global pandemic handed Skype the largest video calling moment in history, and the name everyone used was Zoom. So how does an app become a verb, survive 3 owners, reach hundreds of millions of people, and still miss the market it created? The answer starts with the piece of engineering that made Skype almost impossible to beat. Skype launched in 2003 with a brutally simple promise: talk to anyone through the internet instead of paying a phone company for long distance. Niklas Zennström and Janis Friis had already built Kazaa, the file-sharing network. Their Estonian engineering team reused the same basic insight for voice. Don't send every call through one expensive central system. Let the computers at the edges help carry the network. That made Skype cheap to run and hard to ignore. Families could see each other across countries, while Skype Out connected the free network back to normal telephones and gave it a business model. By 2005, eBay wanted in. It paid about $2.6 billion, hoping conversations between buyers and sellers would turn into commerce. They mostly didn't, and eBay later wrote down $1.4 billion. Skype kept growing anyway. By 2009, it was adding roughly 380,000 users a day and generating about $740 million a year. An investor group led by Silver Lake bought control and prepared it for another sale. Then Microsoft arrived with $8.5 billion, more than 3 times Skype's value in the Silver Lake deal. It wasn't buying a struggling relic. It was buying a global network, a famous consumer brand, and a technology that had made the telephone bill look obsolete. Hidden inside that success, though, was a design assumption that was about to expire. Early Skype was peer-to-peer. 2 callers' computers tried to connect directly, while machines with spare bandwidth could become supernodes that helped other users find one another. For the broadband era, this was clever. Skype borrowed resources from the users already running it, so the network could grow without a matching mountain of company-owned infrastructure. But the system quietly depended on a particular kind of user, someone sitting at a desktop PC that stayed online, had power to spare, and did not mind helping the network. Smartphones broke every part of that bargain. Phones sleep, connections change, batteries drain. Apps get suspended in the background. A device that disappears every few minutes makes a terrible supernode. Multiple devices made it worse. The system could connect 2 machines in the present, but struggled to synchronize messages, contacts, notifications, and call state across devices that came online at different times. Microsoft did not invent this problem, and moving Skype to the cloud was not a mistake. It was necessary. In 2012, Microsoft added dedicated supernodes in its data centers to keep the network stable. By 2016, Skype was finalizing a broader move away from peer-to-peer. That rewrite was surgery on a living product. Every old contact, phone feature, and conversation still had to survive while the machinery changed underneath. One internal service tells the story. Skype's People Core service stored contacts, groups, relationships, and the permissions checked when one user called another. Before 2017, that data sat in 3 large SQL Server databases in the United States. The code was tightly coupled, database deadlocks caused outages, and users complained about missing or incorrect contacts. Distance made it worse. A call controller in Europe had to ask a database in the United States whether one European user could call another. That round trip could break Skype's 1-second call setup target. The team rebuilt the service around Azure Cosmos DB and an event-driven architecture. It solved real problems, but it also reveals where the effort was going years after the acquisition. Data migration, regulatory deadlines, old clients, and a global state system inherited from another era. If you want more postmortems before the next hype cycle, subscribe. The technical debt could be paid. The harder question was, what product would be left when the work was done, because Microsoft kept changing the answer. Skype entered Microsoft as a consumer calling app. Then it replaced Windows Live Messenger, connected to Outlook and Xbox, and lent its name to the old Lync business product. Skype was now a family phone, chat app, telephone replacement, and workplace meeting tool. Each move made sense alone. Together, they blurred the one promise users remembered: open Skype, make the call, and trust that it works. In 2017, the company tried to make Skype feel young again. The redesign added bright colors, reactions, camera effects, and a Snapchat-like feature called Highlights. It looked like an answer to WhatsApp and Snapchat, except Skype's users had not opened the app to become social media creators. They had opened it to call someone. Wired reported that the average App Store rating fell from 3.5 stars to 1.5 after the June redesign. Microsoft apologized and later removed Highlights. Features had arrived, but confidence in the core experience had left. At almost the same moment, Microsoft launched Teams to compete with Slack. Teams had a clear job: persistent workplace collaboration built around channels, calendars, files, and meetings. Skype for Business was folded toward it. Consumer Skype remained alive, but now Microsoft owned 2 communication products, and only one matched the company's strategic future. The final test arrived 3 years later. It should have been Skype's victory lap. In March 2020, offices and schools closed, families stayed apart, and the world suddenly needed video calls. Microsoft said Skype usage rose to 40 million daily users, up 70% in a month. That sounds like a comeback until you look at what happened around it. Zoom made joining a meeting feel disposable. Click a link, enter a room, and leave. You did not need a years-old contact list or a shared history with the host. The product matched the new job better than Skype did. In an April 2020 survey of 1,110 American companies, 27% primarily used Zoom for video meetings. Teams had 18%. Skype had 15%. The media shift was even sharper. Wired reported that Skype appeared in about 50,000 stories that April. Zoom appeared in 195,000. Think about that. The market Skype had spent 17 years teaching the world to use expanded overnight, yet users reached for a 4-letter verb invented by someone else. By the time the pandemic arrived, reliability complaints, account friction, and an uncertain identity had trained people to look elsewhere. Microsoft was pouring energy into Teams, so Skype was competing not only with Zoom and WhatsApp, but with its owner's preferred answer. By 2023, Skype had about 36 million daily users, according to Microsoft, while Teams had passed 300 million monthly users. On February 28, 2025, Microsoft announced that Skype would retire. On May 5th, the service went offline, and chats and contacts were offered a path into Teams. The shutdown took 1 day. The decision had been accumulating for more than a decade. So what actually killed it? Not the cloud migration. The old peer-to-peer design could not serve a mobile, multi-device world forever. Not Microsoft by itself either. Skype remained widely used for years after the acquisition. The fatal mistake was changing the architecture and the product identity at the same time. Users tolerate an infrastructure migration when the product's promise stays stable. Skype asked them to absorb years of transition while that promise moved from calls to chat, consumer to enterprise, social app, and finally, a waiting room for Teams. Compare it with Zoom. Zoom did not need to preserve a peer-to-peer network, telephone credits, messenger contacts, Xbox integration, and 2 decades of product history. It optimized one loop, Click, join, call. Microsoft optimized a portfolio. That is why the $8.5 billion price matters. The acquisition gave Skype every resource it needed, but also made it serve goals larger than itself. Once Teams became the cleaner platform, moving people away from Skype was more valuable than fixing it. Builders should ask one question before a rewrite. What promise must remain untouched while everything underneath changes? If the answer changes with the architecture, you are not modernizing one product. You are forcing users to relearn why it exists. Skype's old engine had to be replaced. Its identity did not. Microsoft rebuilt the network, but it let the reason to choose Skype disappear. Skype lost mobile communication while rebuilding for it. Nokia had already won mobile, then lost a $250 billion empire anyway. That story is on screen now.